Hello everyone, my son Max is an avid Minecraft player, and this year he asked me to make him a Minecraft cake for his birthday, and this is what I came up with, and this is how I made it. The first thing I did was do a little bit of online research. I googled Minecraft cake and printed out a few images just to give me some ideas how I was going to put this together. I just took the elements that I liked from each of these images. I like the different colored blocks, and also like the fact that that person used jello for the water. I did some rough sketches trying to figure out what shape and size the cake was going to be, and then I was ready to start. For the water portion, I used blue jello, or that's also called jelly depending on where you live. And what I did differently from the package directions was I used only 1 cup of boiling water for each package of jello. So I ended up preparing 4 packets of jello, added 4 cups of boiling water, stirred it around till the jello was dissolved, and then poured it into a plastic wrap lined loaf pan and let that set. I wanted something thick enough to be able to cut into blocks the right size. Now for the grass blocks, I wanted to use chocolate cake for this, and I was looking around for a nice dense cake recipe. Because I need to cut it into blocks, I wanted something that wasn't too crumbly or too fragile, and often cake mixes are much too tender and much too crumbly for sculpting. I looked around online and I found one called Durable Cake for 3D in Chocolate, and it had really good reviews and I wanted to try it, and it happens to use a cake mix. Now verbally I'm going to give you the ingredients for a single recipe, but you'll see double of everything on the video because I made a double recipe because I wanted to make sure I had enough cake. There's nothing like making a cake and realizing you don't have enough halfway through. So that's 1 package of cake mix, 4 egg whites, and 1 packet of chocolate pudding mix, just the powder part of it. It's the smaller serving size. It has 4 servings in it. And then you're going to add 1 cup of sour cream. The sour cream adds moisture. It adds a little bit of fat, and it makes the cake nice and fudgy and dense. That's a 1/2 cup of water and 1/3 of a cup of oil plus a tablespoon. Then you're going to mix all the ingredients together with an electric mixer on low at first until it's combined, and then on high for a couple of minutes. Don't forget to scrape down the sides of the bowl and get right to the bottom of the bowl to get all of those ingredients. This batter will be very thick, so I'll warn you ahead of time, but that's perfectly normal. Now to bake it, you put it into a 9 by 13 inch pan if you are using a single recipe. Don't forget to grease the pan very well. The pan I used is a little bit bigger. I think that's a 15 by 12 or something like that because I was using twice the ingredients. Now this isn't self-leveling, so you're going to have to spread it out with a spatula. Just make sure that it is even thickness all throughout the pan and smooth the top. And then bake it at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes or so until when you stick a toothpick in the center, it comes out clean. Let the cake cool in the pan for a few minutes and then remove it from the pan, putting it on a cooling rack. Now I forgot to tape this part, but what I did was, while the cake was still in the pan, I put a rack on top of the cake and then I flipped the entire thing over to remove the cake, and then repeated the procedure to get the cake right side up. Now you let the cake cool completely. The lines that you see on the cake are from the cooling rack. That's what caused those. Once the cake was cool completely, I started to cut it up into the sections I needed for the cake. I cut the edges off because they were rounded in shape, and their batter's always a bit thinner at the edges, so I just wanted a nice square edges, so I cut those off. I'm using a ruler to mark off 2-inch portions because I'm making 2 by 2 inch blocks for this cake, and actually those horizontal lines that the rack made actually came in handy to help keep the line straight when I was cutting. Now I'm cutting one of the tiers, and this cake cuts beautifully. I was very happy with the recipe. There's a few crumbs, but not as much as you would with a regular cake. And then I'm kind of designing as I go here. I know that this is going to be a middle tier. The bottom tier will be a bit larger, so I'm cutting out that bottom tier now. And with a sharp knife, the cake cuts to very nice straight edges. And I put 1 block on the top, and that is pretty much the grass block section done. and I decided to cut out these pieces, and I kind of like this design, this final piece. I put it on a cake board that I bought at the bulk bar, but you can get it at any place that sells cake supplies. And I was afraid that that top block might fall off, so I took a wooden skewer, stuck it through all the layers, and I just snipped it off with a pair of snips. And that skewer is quite long, so there's no danger of anyone choking on that because it's very large. When you're cutting the cake up, you'll just have to remember that those skewers are in there. And I added a second skewer for that piece as well. Now, for the sand blocks, I decided to use Rice Krispie squares. Just regular old Rice Krispie square recipe. I'll put that in the description box if you're interested. I made another double recipe to make sure I had enough and that it was thick enough. And I did the same thing. I just marked off 2-inch by 2-inch blocks. And then I started to add the sand blocks or the Rice Krispie blocks around the grass blocks. And I was kind of making it up as I went along here because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. But that's half the fun in making a cake, is designing it as you go sometimes. Now, as I continue to add the Rice Krispie pieces, some of the cake pieces I found a little bit too big, so I trimmed those off. And I also trimmed some of the Rice Krispie pieces so that they all fit together, kind of like a puzzle. And I also realized that with the Rice Krispie pieces surrounding the cake layers, it was actually acting as a support, and I really didn't have to worry about adding skewers. Now, for the tops of the grass blocks, I'm using plain old buttercream frosting, which is butter, icing sugar, a little bit of milk, and a little bit of vanilla. I'll put the exact recipe ingredients in the description box, as well as a link to a video tutorial. And then you need to add some green food color. I'm using paste food color, and blend that until you get a shade of green that you like. I'm using a pastry bag with a grass tip. I filled up the pastry bag and I used that to decorate the tops of the chocolate cake pieces. Now, the grass tip takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it, but once you do, it's actually kind of fun to use, and it doesn't take all that long to cover the top of a cake. You kind of squeeze, anchor it to the cake, and then squeeze a little bit as you pull up to make those grass strands. If you don't have a grass tip, you can also just use a regular star tip on the top of these as well. This buttercream will crust up once it sits out for a bit. And what that means is the surface of the buttercream forms a little crust. So it's creamy underneath, but it dries a little bit on the top. And that makes it quite durable and easy to transport if you need to bring the cake somewhere. Now, for the water portion, I'm going to use that jello that's been sitting in the refrigerator overnight and is nice and firm. I'm using dental floss to cut the jello into 2-inch blocks, but you can use a sharp knife as well. I just find the dental floss makes nice straight cuts and actually very quick cuts. So I cut those jello pieces into 2 by 2-inch cubes. And if you find your cubes are a little bit too big, it's very easy to trim them into size to get them to fit. Now, I ended up making more jello than I actually needed, but when you're making a cake like this, it's always better to have extra ingredients, because if you do make any mistakes, then you'll have some extra ingredients on hand to be able to fix it. Now, to decorate this cake, I made some little paper Minecraft characters. There are websites online where you can print out these templates, cut them out, fold them, glue them together, and you get some really cute Minecraft characters. I will put a link in the description box to some of those websites if you're interested. That's the zombie, which I ended up not actually using for some reason. Now, to attach the characters, that's Minecraft Steve. I put a skewer into his foot and then just press that into the cake. That way you don't have to have much contact between the paper and the cake. I added some candles as well because Max was turning 14. And there is the completed cake. Max really liked this cake, and so did his friends. What's great about this cake is that the portions are almost already cut out for you, so people can have a piece of Rice Krispie square and a piece of jello, or a piece of cake and a piece of jello, whatever they'd like. I find as well that I probably should have put some buttercream frosting between the cake block layers. That might have held them together a little bit better instead of using a skewer. But overall, I was quite happy with this. And maybe you can make this for a Minecraft fan in your life. And of course, if you don't want to make a whole cake, you can also make individual grass blocks this way as well. And there is Max with his cake. Now, I've made other cakes for Max's birthdays. So the video on the left are his birthday cakes from 1 to 11 years. That's a slideshow. It's a really long video if you're interested in seeing that one. I did a Pac-Man cake for his 12th birthday. That's the center. And the one on the right is an ice cream cake that I made last year for his 13th birthday. So thanks for watching.